the News Channel 5 network, this is MorningLine with Nick Beres.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Beres here on our Wednesday. You know, it's our third live show of the year. I want to remind folks, things started off a little bit slowly since I was off for a while. We had some recorded shows, but I want to let you know this is live this morning. The last 2 days, the calls were a little slow because I know you're used to pre-recorded. You can call in this morning. We'll get the number up in just a moment. And it's we set up our schedule for the first week with some of our regulars that are really good, that we can talk about, and that I know many of you make calls in. So this morning we're talking legal issues, malpractice with malpractice attorney Clint Kelly. Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year.
It's good to see you.
Yeah.
It is a little slow when you get started in the new year because we've had a couple weeks off and viewers are coming back slowly. And so you're welcome to call, get it going, spread the word. But it's good to have you. And how was your New Year?
It was outstanding.
Yeah? You ready for 2019?
I am. And it's great to be on live TV.
Yeah. Yes, no kidding about it. So, hey, we will talk about malpractice cases. Again, when Clint comes on, before we get to some of the cases you brought as we warm up our viewers to call in, let's just remind folks again what it is you do. It's your specialty again. You're board certified.
Correct. Board certified in medical malpractice law. Medical malpractice case, Nick, is a major medical mistake that produces a major injury or death, amputation, paralysis, someone who's lost eyesight, something where there's a very serious injury that impairs the patient's ability to earn a living or pay their medical expenses. And I'm one of, I think now there's maybe 25 to 30 board certified medical malpractice lawyers in the state of Tennessee.
In the entire state?
Correct.
Okay. That's not a lot.
No, it's not. It takes a lot to get it. You've got to try a certain amount of medical malpractice trials. You have to pass a written exam. You have to pass an oral exam with other lawyers who've been board certified. And then once you get through that process, there's an association that then certifies you. And I'm proud to have it, and it's helpful to me, and helps me also impart to the public information about these cases.
Well, exactly. The key on that being board certified, that's your specialty.
Correct.
There are other attorneys out there that might take a malpractice case that are general practitioners. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not their specialty. That's all you do. You don't do divorce.
That's
you
correct.
don't do criminal law.
I don't do criminal law. I don't do business transactions. This is my bread and butter.
Except I would argue some of the cases you've brought before me should also be criminal. I mean, some of the bad things that have happened to clients of yours and to patients, it just boggles my mind.
Well, we're going to talk today, Nick, about some medical malpractice cases that do invade the province of criminal law, if you will. Crimes were committed.
Okay, real quick, as folks think, and we'll open up the line 737-7587. The key on this, again, whether or not there was a mistake made, he talks about standard of care, he can explain that, but also statute of limitations in the state of Tennessee, all right? You've got a year.
1 year from the date that you discover the wrongdoing or discover your injury, you go 1 day beyond 1 year and your case is barred and you'll never get your day in court.
And it doesn't matter how bad the abuse or whatever happened was of you, it's gone. So if you suspect, that's what we always say on this show, give them a call, right?
Pick up the phone. The consultation is free. It's entirely confidential. The patient pays nothing unless I recover money for them, and I will always give a written response to the patient if I decide not to take the case. If I decide to take the case, I'll have the patient come in and see me at the office. And when you call my office, you can speak to Michelle. She handles all my medical intakes. And it never hurts to make the phone call. The worst situation, we've talked about this a lot, Nick, are the patients who don't call, who put it off, think they're going to get better, or they're worried about the legal system and scared what might happen to them until they find out they can't pay their bills or the situation becomes intolerable. They wait beyond that year, and then I have to have that painful conversation about the fact that I can't take their case.
Yeah. Well, listen, I know Clint likes coming on the show because I'm a good guy and likes hanging with me once a month. But he also comes on to educate. But I know for a fact that you've gotten clients off this show.
Oh yeah.
People have called in. So I mean, it's worth making the call, and keep in mind he gets paid when you get paid. It's not something where you have to pay up front.
And I hope, Nick, also that part of this show is I prevented medical injuries from occurring by educating the public about things you can do to prevent being harmed in a hospital, being harmed by a physician. If I've prevented something like that from happening, then it's all worthwhile.
Absolutely. I've learned a ton from you. Stuff that I thought I knew stuff until I talked to you.
Yeah.
All right, listen, we're going to get to some of those cases. We already have a phone call. The number 737-7587. Before we get into, you can keep that up here with us. But let's go to Dawn before we take our first break. Good morning, Dawn.
Good morning.
How are you? What's on your mind, my friend?
Yes, sir. I had a hernia operation back in 17 sometime, and now I've got another hernia. And I just wondered if it's a doctor's fault or if it's a mesh's fault. Whose fault, and what am I supposed to do about it?
Don, when did you have the mesh surgery?
It was in 17. I can't remember exactly when.
When did you first discover that you were having a secondary hernia as a result of the mesh?
Probably 3 months ago, 4.
Okay. You would have, or you would still be within the statute of limitations since you discovered the injury within the year. It's only been about 3 months ago. What I would ask you to do, Don, is call my office. It's 615-800,000 or 615-800-0000.
We'll put the number up also, Don.
And ask to speak to Michelle. Michelle will ask you questions, and we'll get some information. I'll get back to you, Don, and let you know whether I think you have a case.
Yeah. All right, Don, and stick around. We'll get that number up. But listen in here before we move on to another caller and some of your cases. All right, you've talked, I think, about mesh. He says, all right, so I'm guessing what we have here is Don's got a hernia. Okay, that's where the intestine pushes through the muscle wall or something. And they're putting a mesh in there, and have there been problems with that?
Oh, yes, there's been mesh litigation. And there's all kinds of different mesh litigation.
Okay.
A lot of what you see on TV had to do with bladder slings for women. But you've also probably seen in advertisements mesh that was installed around bowels and also to prevent hernias, and the actual material of the mesh broke down after the surgery and created secondary hernias. I don't know if that's what happened in Don's case, but it is theoretically possible and has been reported. Also been situations where the mesh falls apart, gets inside the or around the organs, can cause adhesions, small bowel obstructions, and other types of injuries. So yes, there has been a lot of litigation over mesh. There are situations where the mesh isn't responsible. It's, you know, the physician's misconduct. There are situations where there's a bad outcome. And Nick, we talk about bad outcomes all the time, where the patient has a bad outcome even though the doctor complied with the standard of care or the product was reasonably implanted and reasonably used. So it's hard to tell in these situations without knowing more about it.
Okay, but is there a class action with some of the meshes or no?
There is not.
Okay.
There's what we call mass tort litigation, where all these cases get consolidated in a federal court somewhere, and that's what the bladder sling litigation was. And the hernia, the vaginal mesh litigation was also concentrated in some federal courts, but his is different, and that's why I need to know more about it.
All right, good. Hey, listen, definitely check on that, Don, because as you said, he's still inside that window of 3 months.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
Okay, well, the number is 737-7587. That's an interesting one. Good for him to call. All right, but before we get to our break and such, I wanted to talk. I was traveling a bit, and I was in Phoenix.
Yep.
I was there last weekend when the story broke in Phoenix, and as soon, yeah, it's weird. I'm on vacation, I think of Clint, but it's like as soon as I saw that case, I'm like, whoa. I didn't talk to you between now and then, and you brought this with you.
That's right.
What do you think? And tell the folks what this case is.
You and I probably saw this at the same time. Now, this is a report from the CBS affiliate in Phoenix, KPHO-TV, was the first to report on this. And I tell you, Nick, I've been doing this for 25 years, and you think you've seen most of everything, and it's hard to get shocked. This shocked me. This was a 29-year-old Native American woman who had a healthy baby boy. Unfortunately, she was in a vegetative state for 14 years from a near-drowning incident.
Holy cow.
And when you're in a near-vegetative state, you know, there's no way for you to take care of yourself. You can't speak. You can't report. You're completely vulnerable and helpless.
Okay, but physically, you're being kept alive. So her body biologically is functioning, but her brain is kind of turned off.
That is correct. And so the hospital feeds her. Usually it's through a feeding tube. The hospital takes responsibility for all type of body functions. You and I are trying to figure out why she would be in the hospital
who
for
made
this
the order?
long.
Was it her family that insisted on her being kept alive for 14 years like this, hoping for a miracle?
Don't know the answer. I could speculate all day on this, but the bottom line is she was in this hospital for a long time, wound up pregnant, and gave birth to a child as a vegetable, which, believe it or not, people, you can get pregnant and you can give live birth even though you're a vegetable, because the body functions that the reproductive functions still work. So obviously that begged the question, how did she get pregnant?
Well, I think we know exactly how she got pregnant.
And according to the CBS affiliate, there was a man standing around the patient's bed talking inappropriately about his genitalia.
Oh, really? Over time, people had noticed this and that had been commented about?
The manager in the hospital said female nurses were standing around a non-verbal male's patient's bed, I'm sorry, the female nurses, talking inappropriately about that patient's genitalia. So they're doing testing. I think you learned actually yourself. They're going to start testing the men who work at the hospital, I guess, to try to figure out paternity.
I mean, that's what the baby was born. The doctor said it was amazing that the child was born actually healthy despite no prenatal care. You know, here's the thing. All right, now I want you to hit the different levels of this, right, for litigation. One, first of all, the staff there, how are you not noticing that this woman perhaps is pregnant? Because my understanding is that they didn't realize anything was wrong until she started moaning. I know she's in a vegetative state, but she apparently was in some pain.
Correct.
And somehow was moaning, and they discovered, oh my goodness, she's pregnant.
Even though you're a vegetable, you can still feel pain and sense pain.
All right. So there's that. You know how you know they didn't even look in on this woman. And two, she was raped. Okay,
No
she was raped in an unconscious state sometime within the last 9 months. And so it begs the question: what kind of people do you have working there? How come there's no supervision? I understand 14 years. Maybe after a while, you're not checking on her every 5 minutes, of course. What's the standard of care for someone like this? How responsible? Do you have to have a security guard? You obviously had a sicko that decided to go have sex with a vegetative woman. Right. So, I mean, how do you stop that? There is a lawsuit here, though, right?
Yes, and here's how this is where it begins. Every hospital has a duty to hire competent staff and to do a criminal background check. So that's where it's going to start, I suspect, with this place, is to determine did they do their job once they identify the perpetrator. Secondly, and you and I were talking about this off air, you're going to see a battle in the years to come about whether hospitals, just like police officers now, are going to be required to have cameras installed in the rooms, at least in the ICU or in other places where the patients are vulnerable and can't help themselves. Why don't we have cameras now, Nick?
I think it's because they're afraid they'll get caught doing something wrong on camera.
Get sued.
Yes.
It will
it's
be
evidence.
It will be the camera will in essence be proof of medical malpractice that occurs in the hospitals. They don't want that to happen. That's why a lot of childbirths now are not permitted to be videoed in case the obstetrician or the nurses commit malpractice in delivering the baby. So what you're going to have is extreme pushback from the hospitals because they figure this is going to open them up to liability, particularly if this is used as proof positive of some type of negligence occurring, you know, whether the nurse gives the wrong drug,
Doesn't it work both ways? You always hear the story about police cameras, you know, and the body cams for them. And I view that both ways. Yeah, it may catch an officer doing something wrong, but it also, on the other hand, could catch the officer doing everything right when he's blamed for something. I mean, shouldn't it go both ways? If I'm a hospital, I'm thinking, look, you know, if we really messed up, we should be held accountable. Of course, they don't say that. And then, two, if you know someone's making a claim with a bogus lawsuit, we can show them, no, here's the video, take a look.
That's an outstanding point, Nick. I mean, the camera can implicate and the camera can exculpate or vindicate. And that's the reason, in my mind, the primary reason why cameras should be installed inside hospital rooms to monitor these types of situations. I mean, think about this, people. You've got nurses at nursing stations. They're looking at monitors that are tracking heart rhythm, respiratory rate, oxygen saturation. Are you telling me that they can't have a little window on there that also looks at the patient?
Is there a HIPAA issue here potentially with a patient realizing they're in a hospital and wondering what ultimately happens to that video? Assuming there's no lawsuit, but I mean there's a video file of you perhaps naked in a hospital room, privacy with intimate details, and it's video as opposed to hard, you know, data that's just in a computer hard drive.
Well, as long as it doesn't leave the hospital. I mean,
there just has to be security, because I can see privacy issues.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, we deal with that every day. I mean, that's not anything new. I mean, here's the question. Would you rather be protected, have that as a means to save you from something like this or some other type of situation, or have evidence of negligence that occurs on someone else's watch that hurts you, or you're going to be worried about walking to the bathroom half naked in a gown and somehow this is going to leak out to everyone else who look at it. I mean, you see my point?
Yeah,
and you're
absolutely.
right, it is a balancing test, but to me, this is going to be, among other things, reasons why we're going to ultimately have cameras in hospital rooms.
Interesting. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we can talk more about that. He's also got some other cases that'll just shock you. You have some interesting work, my friend. You scratch your head.
It's been an incredible month for this stuff.
Yeah, it has. All right, the number is 737-7587. We've already gotten one call in and hopefully help that individual. But if you have a question, comment about a situation involving, you know, perhaps a medical treatment, a hospital visit, anything along those lines where you wonder, was something done wrong, give us a call. Clint Kelly's one of the very best malpractice attorneys in the state. We'll take a break and be back with more right after this.